Turn 1 Soul Ring.
It's giving me, whenever I put my cursor over everything, it's giving me the reminder text on, because I just had to re-download GarageBand before we started recording. So it's a little annoying. That was a little annoying, but overall, not too bad. And I did it. I had to reinstall GarageBand or update it because Eric and I and our Riley, our other co-host, and Trevor, who's been on the show before, we've been trying the spell table to play Magic remotely, and it works pretty well, but we were having trouble with just having phones wirelessly connected. So if you're going to use it, I would suggest a webcam, or there's a program called Camo, and that's why I had to update so I could run it on my very, very old MacBook. And it's we're going to try it again, and it is working. It does work pretty well, but as things continue with the lockdown, we have to do what we got to do to play Paper Magic.
Got to get your fix.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I guess we can start this very special. No, this isn't going to come out on Christmas Eve. Episode.
It is Christmas Eve today.
It is Christmas Eve, and welcome to the show, everybody. This is Turn 1 Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And we have our editor, Ainsley, joining us again.
Hello.
As guest host, of course.
Yes, you better clarify.
which means that we're concluding our two-part series explaining the events depicted in the novel Bloodlines. Like we mentioned last episode, Bloodlines is the fourth and final novel in the Artifact cycle. And in part one of this series, we explained what the Bloodline Project was and how it would eventually create a human that would be capable of wielding Urza's legacy weapon to defeat Yawgmoth and eliminate the Phyrexian threat against Dominaria. We also mentioned a few new characters, and we left off with the Phyrexian Inner Circle member Krog bringing the Coruscant elder Davil to the artificial plane of Wrath so that Davil could learn how to both control and manufacture Flowstone, and just as importantly, find a way to kill Urza. I think that second part is a little bit more important. They want to get rid of Urza. He's a threat.
Yep. But they were like, here, go do this, and if we like you, then I guess you can be the all Grandmaster.
That's right. And they also promised him completion as well,
right.
Which they haven't quite delivered on yet.
Right, because he was ill.
Terminally ill.
Yeah.
And he was shunned by his people.
Because he was ill.
Because he was ill. And so when the Phyrexian showed up, he sold out his people, because they offered him a cure to his illness. And, because they had treated him so badly,
his people sold him out, so he sold them out.
That's right. That's right. And that's why we should...
Eye for an eye.
That's why we should have been treating these people in PCHs quite a bit better before this second wave. Okay? We could have avoided a lot of Davil-type situations.
Yeah, they're all turning on us now.
They might. The ones that survive. It's a terrible situation.
It is, yeah.
So, while all that was going on, we got to get back to our Tolarian crew. And
Yay!
That's right. Everybody's favorite part, right? I kind of like the bad guys more.
Of course you do.
So, but Karn is my favorite.
Yes.
Karn is my favorite, and he's good. So we haven't mentioned Karn that much so far. We just mentioned him a little bit at the top of last episode, I think, talking about Joyra and Teferi and how they're no longer in his life.
And he's a little sad.
He's sad. He's a sad guy.
Sad.
So in the absence of his former friends, his current friends that are just far away, Karn became good friends with Gatha during his time at the Academy, and we went over Gatha and his early exploits with the Bloodline Project last episode. But Karn wasn't too happy about the questionable experiments the mage was performing, so Karn decided that he, much like Baron and Rain at the last episode, needed a vacation.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
When I was in grade 6, we did a musical, and it was called I Need a Vacation.
Who did you play?
I played the mother of a kid who went to summer camp, who was very unhappy at summer camp. And I had to read the letter they wrote home about how unhappy they were.
But you were getting a vacation from him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was pleased as the parent.
Oh,
yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So Karn found that vacation crewing the Weatherlight on a trip to Yavimaya. And if you want to know more about Yavimaya, go back and listen to our Time Stream series, which is the one we did right before this.
Yeah.
I think they're in the 80s somewhere. Anyways, Rain and Multani were on their way to Yavimaya on an ambassadorial mission. They were ferrying the Llanowar ambassador Raphaelos to the forest, a band commander. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Llanowar were a tribe of elves from the forest of the same name. Raphaelos was sent to Yavimaya by his tribe to foster relations between the two forests and to shore up their defenses for the coming invasion.
Is this guy here Raphaelos, or is he one of the elves?
He is Raphaelos,
That's Raphaelos.
and he is an elf.
Oh,
he's
it
one and
is
the same.
both. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why he has pointy ears.
Yes.
And
long, luxurious hair.
and he looks quite gay in this picture, like happy gay.
Yeah, he's a dandy.
Well, like, look at that colorful forest you're in. Like, how could you
Yeah.
not be happy?
Truly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, he's not like Azuri, who always looks mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So when they arrived in the forest in Yavimaya, Raphaelos and Multani swapped places. Raphaelos becoming the voice of the forest, or the this is something we also talked about in our time stream series, how Multani was the avatar of the forest, and the forest, he was like the will of the forest, even though he was a sentient creature all on his own. He was sort of I don't know how to put it. It's sort of like a hive mind, the entire forest, but Multani is
Like, Multani could feel any part of the forest, and like anything that happened could hear it. It was like Multani was part of the forest.
Isn't that like in is it Princess Mononoke or one of those?
Princess Mononoke is about a forest. Yeah.
Wasn't she like? Couldn't she feel what was happening in the forest, or am I out to lunch?
No, I don't think she could, but the forest spirit could.
The forest spirit.
Yeah.
It's like he's like a forest spirit.
Yes, he's like the prime forest spirit. But anyways, they made this swap for two reasons. First, Llanowar was a far more aggressive and militant place, and the Llanowar elves were a warrior culture. Wanting to give Yavimaya the best chance in defending itself from the invasion, Raphaelos planned to transform the forest into a place similar to Llanowar. The second reason for this exchange was that Multani wanted to have a chance to explore the multiverse while crewing the Weatherlight, so he's getting a vacation too.
Nice.
He wanted to learn as much as he could and bring that information back to Yavimaya in hopes of defending his home.
Getting the most of all the information from wherever you can be.
That's right. That's right.
There you go. Wherever you go.
There you be. Yeah. I used to work with a guy that said that properly, and he's kind of a dink. But I just like saying that, and it's actually meaning it. Like, it's like when somebody sees you sweeping a floor and they say, "Hey, when you're done here, come to my place," but they're serious and they think it's funny. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. So anyways, Karn had a pretty good time on his trip away from Tolaria, but it was also around this time in the story that Karn's memory and memories became a problem.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's like the game Memory. But he's too good at it.
Is he too good at it or bad at it?
No, he's really good at it. He's so good that he's paralyzed by it.
Wow.
So it wasn't long after their return to Tolaria that the decision was made to help Karn, or at least Karn's return to Tolaria and Rain. Multani was, going out and, taking the Weatherlight on a exploratory mission. Yeah. That the decision was made to help Karn move on from his past attachments to people like Joyra and Teferi. And for a long time, these attachments only affected Karn's mood, and apparently everyone could live with a sad robot in their midst. But Karn's memory was beginning to get in the way of the golem performing everyday tasks.
Oh man, I relate to this on such like a level. Like if I'm having like a sad time or a mad time, I find it very hard to focus on like getting work done. I know some people like it's like getting work done helps distract them from the stuff that's consuming them.
Well, get what you need to get done. Yeah. I'll deal with my personal problems when I have time.
Yes, well, you're intrinsically motivated, so, that makes sense for you. But anyways, I digress. I relate, Karn. I understand.
So because Karn could remember everything in complete detail, it made it difficult for him to make simple decisions without going through all the memories he had stored over the centuries that were related to the decision in question. Whatever decision he's making right now. Like, do I go left? Do I go right? I don't know. Do I choose this oil to oil up my joints, or do I choose that oil? So he became paralyzed by his memories. And it's sort of like if human beings made decisions without emotion, which is how we make every decision. You know, there's this idea of free will, and I think that does exist to a certain degree, and the idea that
logic,
and that we make we make rational decisions.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, our decisions are based on our past experiences, our memories, and how the emotions related to those memories influence our current decision. But if you had to make decisions like Karn with a lot less emotion and a lot more logic, and the way, I guess, a kind of a good way I've heard it described is if you, let's say you were going to the grocery store and you went to the cereal aisle, and there are dozens of options in that aisle. And you know, let's say you maybe dated someone once and they were a pain in the ass and they really like Count Chocula. So you have a negative connotation when you look at that Count Chocula box, and you're probably not going to get it, especially if it's not a cereal that you would normally buy. But you make all those kinds of decisions in a split second based on, you know, your brain accessing those memories and the emotion related to them. And it all happens incredibly fast.
And it's subconscious. Like
yes.
you're not actively going, I don't like this cereal because of this person.
And sometimes that does come up. You do think about that. But overall, those kinds of more mundane decisions, not so much. Mm-hmm. So with Karn, he does have emotion and he does make decisions in a similar way, but instead of it happening very, very quickly and subconsciously, he's almost reliving every memory associated with the decision that he's in the process of making, and it's just he just can't. You know, he can make a decision, but it takes forever.
He's being overloaded with all the information every single time he has to make a decision.
Yeah, he needs more RAM.
Like the processing, yeah. Uh-huh. He's a better processor, yeah.
Stick some RAM sticks in that guy.
Oh.
So Urza, Baron, Rain, and Gatha plan to fix the golem's memory problem by opening up his head and manipulating the Phyrexian Heartstone that was Karn's brain and effectively made him who he was.
And then there's a nifty little picture of it.
That's the art from the card Heartstone. So I don't know if that's Karn's particular Heartstone, but that is a Phyrexian Heartstone.
It's cool. I like its little harness.
Mm-hmm. Well, you gotta it flies away, I think, if you don't harness it. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
The chains or the like whip thing. I guess the chains. Oh, it's got a little leather straplet.
Yeah, it's like a thing. Like it looks sort of like a harness. Like if a person was wearing a little harness.
So Urza had designed the cage-like structure using Thran metal that would perfectly enclose the Heartstone. The cage was designed to slowly grow around the Heartstone and effectively cap Karn's memories at 20 years.
Oh.
Because it's Thran metal, it can grow. So finally that growing's coming in handy, huh?
Thanks.
Meaning that at any given time, the golem would only be able to remember events that occurred 20 or fewer years previous. And in addition to the cage, Urza wasn't sure what effect it would have on Karn's overall personality, but he knew that the golem couldn't continue to function with fully vivid memories of everything he'd explained for reasons we just mentioned. So it would take a full year's growth of the metal to squeeze the Heartstone enough to suppress Karn's older memories, and unfortunately when that happened, 2 centuries of accumulated memories would disappear.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Mm-hmm. So this special metal, we've talked about it before. We talked about it during time streams as well. Mm-hmm. So do you think it's just like someone's job to like maintain this metal that keeps growing? And it's like, oh, gotta diarize that in a month. I gotta check back on this metal and shrink it all again.
Probably, melt some down for what they're using it for. Yeah,
it's high maintenance.
But I know for the Weatherlight, because it's part of it's made of Thran metal, and part of it is made of part of it is made from the wood from the weather seed tree that they got from Yavimaya. They grow against each other. So, for example, the Weatherlight doesn't need that kind of maintenance because the weather seed and the Thran metal keep themselves at bay. Maintained. Otherwise, they would keep growing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be so cool if, like, the way, like, you could, like, build a house using Thran metal, and it's like when you first buy it, it's like a certain size, and then over your lifetime, your house just slowly gets bigger?
Yeah, we need an addition. We're going to have, we're going to get another cat. I need an addition.
That'd be cool. Like, the way sort of, like, the value of homes goes up, the value goes up, but also the size goes up.
It's a lot of furniture. You're gonna have to keep up with the furniture. Make it out of Thran metal. There you go.
Your chairs just get huge.
My feet don't touch the floor anymore.
So, there are other people in Karn's life that have also been alive this whole time, so they'll have those memories. But it is sad that Karn is losing all these memories, and as readers of these stories, we do have the novels. So if we forget what happens, we can always go back and read them. And being human, we can't remember everything in exquisite detail, so we might have to. But you don't have to go back and read them. Just listen to this content. So for Karn, he struggled with the inability to remember everything in exquisite detail, as one would, having their perception changed in such an extreme way. And this is expressed in the following excerpt, and these are Karn's thoughts.
There were events from as little as 4 days prior, which he could no longer recall with exacting detail, fading for their lack of emotional significance as they would in a human mind. How did they stand it? Karn could not remember ever feeling frightened, and these days his lack of a memory no longer meant that it was true, but he felt frightened now. Standing there, his memories arranged around him like trophies of the past.
And he had little keepsakes from his various adventures and things like that. And he had a picture of Joyra, and every night before he went to bed, he would recite this mantra that, like, this is Joyra. Joyra is my best friend, so that he wouldn't forget.
Oh God, I love Karn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Such sad story.
And this really begs the question, like, how much of who we are is a result of our memories and experiences, and how much isn't. And this does seem like a cold and sort of heartless thing to do to Karn. And we know that Urza is sort of known for doing that so far, but I think this is actually an act of kindness on Urza's part. I think this is, when he was designing Karn, when he built him and he threw that Heartstone in there, he didn't really know what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know that Karn, that this would eventually become a problem. I don't know if he was thinking 200 years into the future, but doing this for Karn allowed him to keep going, because who knows what would have happened if they just left him. He might have just sat there being paralyzed by every mundane decision that he had to make. So I think for Urza, this is kind of a way to fix a mistake that he didn't know he had made at the time.
That is fair. It's just like, it kind of sucks because it's like, hey, there's important things that you just forget anyways. Mm-hmm. But it's like Urza can obviously remember things from when he was younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of like the human brain, right? Like, we don't remember everything in detail. Mm-hmm. Even Urza, who's been alive for thousands of years, doesn't remember everything in detail. But I guess this
still remembers things.
Of course. And because of that, this kind of makes Karn more human. And I think this was just kind of a weak substitute for a human brain. This was sort of the best that they could do, is capping the memories, because after
you can't just replicate a human brain. That's not
not yet anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyways, regardless of how you feel about what was done to Karn, it needed to be done so that he could continue to be a integral part of defending Dominaria from the invasion. We're going to get back to Gatha now. About 75 years after Davil took up stewardship of Rath, Gatha finally departed Tolaria, never to return. Like we mentioned in the last episode, that's a spoiler, I guess, but I just spoiled it. Gatha was allowed to continue working on the Bloodline project after it was discovered that he'd been splicing Phyrexian DNA into his Metathran subjects. Mm. And even though he was under increased supervision after that was found out, he continued to experiment with Phyrexian DNA. This continued violation of the project's guidelines was what finally stripped Gatha of his ability to participate in the project. And he knew decades earlier that his leaving Tolaria was only a matter of time when he realized that the means he used in reaching his goals were unacceptable to Baron and possibly Urza. It's kind of unclear how much Urza condemns Gatha's actions while he was at the Academy. Huh. But that being said, the goals of the three of them, Gatha, Urza, and Baron, were quite similar, which was the defense of Dominaria from the invasion and the eventual defeat of Yawgmoth. So now that Gatha couldn't work on the Bloodline project on Tolaria, he gathered what he would need to continue his own Bloodline project somewhere else on Dominaria. Bloodline Project 2, this time it's personal. A place that would appreciate his efforts. Among the research and materials he would need to continue the project on his own, Gatha also took enough slow time water to live many more centuries. Because you could just take that stuff in a jug.
Just filling up a jug,
it's good. You don't need to drink it straight from the source.
But do you need to keep, like, I thought we talked about this before, like, do you need to keep drinking that stuff to keep going? Like, because Joyra doesn't need to anymore, right? And she's just forever...
She's forever young, like the song. Yeah.
Like the multiple songs of that title.
Yeah. That's a good title.
It is, yeah.
Because she doesn't. Maybe if you drink it for a few decades, you're good.
You're good.
But I don't know if Gatha knows that. I don't know. And in terms of the like what's known about the slow time water, they like in the, let's say, the Tolarian archives, that might be known, but it might be like restricted.
Unknown
like
to him.
Yeah. Like how at the Jedi Temple, you can, they know about Sith holocrons and they have Sith holocrons, but they're restricted. Only like Jedi Masters can actually play around with them, so to speak. Mm-hmm. For you Star Wars fans. So Gatha escaped the island under the cover of night with phony paperwork that granted him passage on the Weatherlight.
Ooh.
Which is a great way to escape.
Oh, yeah.
Under the cover of night. When he reached the skyship's first stop, he began a journey that wouldn't end for another 12 years when he reached the nation of Keld.
Ooh.
Yeah, so now I'm going to tell you guys all about Keld. Keld was a warrior nation located on a northwesterly continent of Dominaria. It was populated by humans, like almost every other part of the plane. But unlike the rest of the humans that populated the plane, the Keldons represented the Norfolk or Vikings of Dominaria.
Cool.
Which is sort of, this is sort of topical because the next standard set that's coming out is Kaldheim, and it's a Norse
themed
Viking set.
I love Norse stuff.
So just go back to Keld, guys. Let's do like another Dominaria set, but whatever. Maybe they will. I don't know. They're bringing back. They might be. Eric, did you see those leaks for the new Vorinclex and the counters and stuff? Like they might be. They're unconfirmed leaks, but it sort of seems like it's hinting at bringing back Infect and like Phyrexians like fighting the Viking people of Kaldheim.
I did see the Vorinclex.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens. Like I said, they're unconfirmed, but like we suspected, they're probably gonna bring back like snow and snowland. So absolutely, I love snow. If you were about to buy some snowlands, some snow basics, just wait.
Hold your horses.
We're gonna get a bunch more pretty soon. Next, I guess not next month, but early February.
End of January. Oh yeah, might be next month.
Might be.
If we're good.
Because I think Theros was January.
Well, the release date for Kaldheim is February 5th, but the pre-release is in January.
Right. It's the week before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
So
anyway.
most adult Keldons were at least 6 feet tall, and it wasn't uncommon for them to be 7 feet tall. And in addition to their towering stature, Keldons were very muscly. And they were remarkably resistant to cold weather.
My kind of people.
That's a great combo right there. Keld was located in the mountainous region of the continent it inhabited, and as a result of its location, it was very cold, probably why the Keldons had such resistance to it. Another result of the climate that the Keldons lived in was the tint of their skin. It ranged from ashy white to blue-gray, and there must not have been a lot of sun.
Yeah.
Even though the Keldons were human, they were clearly like no other human on Dominaria. And even before Gatha arrived in Keld, the Keldons were a feared group. They were often hired as mercenaries to fight wars for other nations, and that was mostly how the country was funded.
So they're fighters, not lovers.
Oh, they're lovers too, but
they're
they're lovers for free, but they're fighters for
a fee.
There you go. That's good. I don't want to call it like the subtitle of an episode when we're recording, but that's a good one. So the Keldon government was also based around war, and instead of a leader being elected, the strongest among them became their ruler. In Keld, only the strong survived, and the strongest among them ruled, which is actually a very green perspective in terms of the color pie. And it's interesting because the vast majority of cards that depict Keldons are red. We do, of course, have Radha, and she's always been Gruul colors, but I just thought that was kind of interesting because that's not a red. It's a little bit red, but it's overall more green. Like if you look at the philosophy pages on the color pie.
Sure.
Anyway, the ruler of Keld was called the Grand Warlord, and under him or her, they had regular warlords that controlled the war hosts. War hosts were similar to a village or group of people living in the same area. Okay. It's like these are my war hosts. That's what the warlord would say. Like this, you can meet them. Welcome.
That's a big sword.
He is a big old guy. I like his antlers.
I like his black horse.
Also cool.
Yeah.
And has like a horn, like a rhino or like a unicorn. Like it's like a pointy black horn.
I would definitely ride a black horse, like much like a black car. Like they don't show dirt as much. It's hot in the summer, but
they're in a winterland, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Actually, it might be beneficial to have a black horse.
I wear a lot of black, as you both know, and in the summer it's rough, but in the winter, especially on a day like today where it's terribly cold but very, very sunny, it's like minus. Like last night with the wind chill, it was like minus 40.
Yeah.
And that's Celsius, everybody. And you walk out on a day like today and it's sunny and it's super cold, but the sun is just like warming you up on your black outfit. So it's very very enjoyable. Outfit. My little black outfit. Yeah.
You know what's fun is actually minus 40 Celsius is also minus 40 Fahrenheit.
Whew, we could do a whole episode on how that works.
Let's not.
So the Keldons do sound pretty barbaric, but I thought there was a strange kind of fairness to their society, being that strength is prized above all else. And again, fairness, not equality, because those aren't the same things. But fairness because anyone can ascend to the position of Grand Warlord if they're strong enough. You don't need to have money or have an immaculate past, or like I said earlier, like the him or her. It doesn't, they don't discriminate. You just have to be strong. And I think that's kind of refreshing.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
So it's it's not equality. It's not like our society, but or not that our society is purely equal. We have our own problems, but it is fair. It's sort of like natural selection.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, until Gatha arrived, because he didn't think it was terribly refreshing, because he was an outsider, which was the first obstacle that he had to overcome when he was taken in by them, the warlords of Keld. The second was that he was clearly a weak man physically, which was something Keldons looked down on. So when he arrived, Gatha was taken to the necropolis, the place where the warlords of Keld periodically met, and the capital of their country. Sort of like, I don't know, it's probably like the House of Commons for our Canadian listeners. Even though Gatha was an outsider and was nowhere near as physically imposing as the warlords he spoke to, he offered them a way to improve their ability to wage war, and that was something that the Keldons were, of course, very interested in. So they took him in and allowed Gatha to continue his research, and if the mage failed or tried to cross the warlords in any way, they could easily kill him and continue to breed warriors on their own terms.
Oh yeah. Win-win for them.
Yeah. And in the 12 years that Gatha had been traveling, he did try to set up a new lab in several countries, including his home country, Argiv, which we did mention in the last episode, and all of them eventually exiled him because they didn't have the stomach, as Gatha put it, for the experiments that he was performing. Probably because the results were more often than not unfortunate.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So based on what he knew about Keldon culture, he thought that attempting to engineer the strongest soldier on Dominaria would be right up their alley. And it was. But instead of growing Metathran, Gatha was given free rein to experiment on lower-class Keldons in order to gather information that he could then use to engineer the most powerful Keldons that would ever exist. And so I did say that their society was fair, but those that were deemed too weak to fight in battle were essentially slaves, and also when they did invade other countries, they would take people from those countries as slaves. So, the whole slave thing, that's bad.
Bad news.
Bad news. And also also experimenting on people.
Your lowest class of citizens
Is
That's
bad.
also bad
Having
news.
classes of
Having
citizens
classes of citizens
is bad.
Bad news.
Bad news. So, just that's
So the
the one
Keldon
caveat.
are not a culture to look up to.
No.
They're not quite as...
No.
They're cool, but...
Yeah, but I mean, going back to what we were talking about last episode with the Metathran and creating an entire race of essentially slaves to fight a war, that's not good either.
No.
So, anyways, once Gatha began his work and learned more about Keldon society, he found out that the Keldons had been performing their own kind of crude eugenics program. They would breed together the biggest and strongest clans, the most muscly, to make even bigger and stronger warriors. And over the next 40 years, Gatha took what the Keldons had already learned and what he knew from his own research and worked at creating the mightiest warrior in Keldon history. Probably Dominarian history. Not really.
Ooh.
After devising a relatively stable method for augmenting Keldon children that would turn them into hulking monsters of men, Gatha's abilities became sought after by the highest-ranking warlords in Keld. The warriors that Gatha created came to be known as Witch Kings, which is a super cool name.
That is such a cool
Nice.
What
name.
a cool name.
I wonder if I've heard that before.
Kings because they were kings among other Keldon warlords, and witch because they were able to, through magical ability, draw strength and battle prowess from the war hosts that fought with them, making them the most formidable warriors on all of Dominaria. So again, for you Star Wars fans, it's kind of like battle meditation, but instead of the Jedi that's providing the strength and battle prowess through the battle meditation, the Witch King is taking it from their war hosts, all fighting together.
Cool.
Yeah. So one of Gatha's greatest successes, a Witch King known as Trog, wanted Gatha to give his son the same augmentations. Gatha had yet to devise a reliable method of augmentation, and it was more common for subjects to die from the procedures, or at least be left in a state where they could not fight in battle, so they'd probably get experimented on more.
Yikes.
So not wanting to incur the wrath of a powerful Keldon by saying no to his request, Gatha chose to roll the dice and begin augmentation on Trog's son. When he asked for the boy to be brought to his lab, Trog informed Gatha that his son was not yet conceived.
Oh.
The Witch King wanted Gatha to engineer a son for him, a Witch King that would rival all others. Trog promised that if Gatha was successful, he would see the mage was seated on the Warlord Council. And although Gatha knew that someone like him, someone with no warrior background, would ever be allowed to be seated on the council, he was still intrigued by the prospect, even though he had very little experience in preconception. But like any good eugenicist, he began the work with reckless abandon for Keldon life. So while all that was going on in Keld, Davol had been mastering the production and his own control of Flowstone. He was also improving on the design of the negators that he had been breeding and periodically sending out to hunt down Urza. But after several decades of work, he was no closer to killing the Planeswalker. Every mission he sent negators on always ended with dead Phyrexian bodies for him to study and improve upon for the next generation that he would send after Urza. And, this is a very common Phyrexian strategy, right? We see what doesn't work. We're going to throw these guys in the vats, melt them down, and just make something better, make something that doesn't have these weaknesses. So, Urza knows that. He should just be vaporizing these guys.
Yeah.
Don't give him anything to work with.
Yeah.
So by this time, about 150 years had passed since Davol had been brought to Rath. He had still not been completed, but had been granted near eternal life, if he continued to be useful, of course. He could be killed, but, barring that, he would live forever.
They like him so far.
Yeah, he's doing good work.
And that's him there?
That's him there, and if you look closely...
Is that Flowstone he's holding?
Oh, it's a piece of paper.
Oh.
But if you look closely, he does have the Phyrexian insignia, the circle with the line through it, on his little skull cap now.
Oh, yes, he sure does. I
Oh.
like his little fingerless gloves
Rainier.
and his long, gangly fingers with black pointed nails. It's kind of doing it for me.
He's like, eh.
That's totally the sound he's making, Eric.
Krog was also still a permanent fixture in the stronghold of Rath. He oversaw everything Davol did, just as Davol oversaw everything that occurred on Rath. Krog was the one thing standing between Davol and completion, as well as full mastery over Rath. Krog would decide who became Evincar of Rath, and so at this point, Davol began to lay the groundwork for a plan that would see Krog eliminated. Davol thought that if he could prove himself to Yawgmoth, he would become the first Evincar of Rath. So now we've reached the next part of the story, and it takes place over a couple more centuries, and part 2 is called The Spark of Life, and it takes place between 3655 to 3863 AR.
After Rhesus.
After pieces. And there is some, if you were paying attention last episode when we went over the how's it, natural selection, the human component, and the year when that ends and the year when this starts, there is some hang time, and I'm just here to tell you I don't know. So remember at the top of this series when we said that the heir to the legacy would have to be bred in real time and in connection with white mana aligned lands? It's at this point in the story that we start to follow the exploits of the clan Capuchin. You guys should do like an excited noise.
Oh!
Thanks. Clan Capuchin was one of 7 ruling families of the country of Benalia on Dominaria. The Capuchin lineage was chosen by Urza as part of the Bloodline project because of their strong connection to white mana. By this point in the story, Urza had been following the bloodlines of Clan Capuchin for several centuries, but the first time he actually intervened was when Nathan Capuchin was the leader of the family. And on a trip to Benalia, Urza offered Karn as a servant to Clan Capuchin for 50 years if Nathan would agree to a marriage between his cousin and another member of one of the other 6 Benelish ruling families, a marriage that Urza thought would keep his plans for an heir in the right direction. When I was doing this part of the outline, I was also rewatching The Crown for like the dozenth time. Love it. Love that show. But, their thing is an heir and a spare. Right? Have 2. Yeah. But, I think Urza could have used this a little bit. Like, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, dude. Come on. Have a second heir to the legacy. It's like, surely if you can divine, a line of people will create one heir, you can do it again. But anyways, that was just something that I was thinking about. So, going back to our time streams, our episodes where Urza, trades Karn to the Viashino, I remember how upset we all were.
I was upset.
Oh, totally.
I was livid. And I was reading this book and I was like, he's doing it again, but it's not what you think. Because Karn was actually sent by Urza to live with Clan Capuchin on a secret mission. And also remember, Karn can't remember that he was given away, that this has happened before, so he's good.
Oh.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Poor Karn.
So Karn was actually sent there by Urza to monitor the Capuchins, as well as holding on to the legacy artifacts for safe keeping, save for the Weatherlight, of course. And Urza must have thought that the artifacts would be safer inside of Karn than anywhere else, because he's got a lot of negative space in there. Urza just jammed them all in there, except for the legacy and his eye stones. But all the rest of the legacy artifacts are in there. And remember, Karn is also a part of the legacy.
That's right.
Yeah. So they're kind of at home inside of him.
Oh.
Yeah. Not that he can remember.
Oh. Poor Karn.
So Baron still wasn't comfortable with the idea of Urza taking an active role in these people's lives, but there was nothing he could do about it, as usual. Urza would do what he thought was best, no matter what Baron said. And these are Baron's thoughts regarding this new step in the project.
There's a point, some might say a moment, in scientific experimentation known as the complexity cusp. Whether artifice or magical in nature, this is a dangerous area where the procedure or process reaches a complex stage that it can no longer be controlled by scientific method. We, the progenitors, begin to react to the experiment rather than the reverse. The larger or wider the scope of the experiment, the easier for the cusp to be reached and surpassed without immediate notice.
That's right. That's what happens when you play God, everybody.
Yeah.
And also, our if we have any scientist listeners, let us know if the complexity cusp is a real thing.
Yeah.
They might have just made it up for this book. So, as much as Urza would attempt to selectively breed future members of Clan Capuchin, and there wasn't just Clan Capuchin, like there were other, families and groups of people, not even just humans, but sentient creatures that he had been manipulating and would continue to manipulate to eventually get a group of people. Because it was the Metathrone. It was a group of people that was the best of what Dominaria had to offer, and then one singular heir to the legacy that would lead all of them. Now that Urza wasn't dealing with subjects in a lab, the project had grown beyond his control, and the human component of the project would now have to fend for itself.
All right.
And for the sake of brevity, we're not going to go into all the Capuchins that eventually led to Urza's heir. We'll just say that part of the project did work, and Urza did get his heir. Spoiler alert. They kept writing books after this.
they kept going.
So for now, we're going to return to Keld to see the results of Gatha's attempts at preconception.
All right.
After 6 generations of engineering Trog's bloodline, Gatha had created his most formidable subject in Krieg.
Hey.
I think you might be related to Krieg. Though Trog was long dead, his desire to sire the most powerful Witch King in Keld had finally become a reality.
Desire to Sire.
That's actually...
Sick band name or something.
That is very good.
Yeah.
I also really like to use that euphemism when I tell people that I'm a father. I'm like, I've sired a child.
I've sired a child.
There you go.
Yeah, I've sired an heir, if you will.
I had the desire.
Yeah.
So Krieg's power was so great, the Phyrexians had taken notice of Keld's growing strength. And it's at this point, shortly after Krieg's rise to Grand Warlord of Keld, that the Phyrexians began to test Keld and other powerful Dominarian nations with small strike forces. So not a full-on invasion, just a series of tests.
Little baby invasions.
Yeah.
Sure.
And by this point in the story, Davil had grown wrath to the point where he could overlay parts of the plane onto Dominaria and transport troops for targeted strikes. So that's where these tests are coming from. These targeted strikes are coming from. And it's actually really smart, because if your plan is to invade and take control of a plane, like Yawgmoth's plan is for Dominaria, and you have this huge impediment, which is Urza, who's turning this plane into a whole defense force, then you need to know as much about it as possible so that when you do invade, it's as guaranteed a victory as you can be.
As you can get.
Yeah.
So Davil's first attempts on Keld were rebuffed with little effort by Krieg and his war hosts. But the main goal with those attacks was to test Keldon's strength, and with each subsequent attack, the Phyrexians learned more about how they would eventually defeat Krieg and his warlords and war hosts. Both of them.
Whoa.
Davil in this picture is just grit in his teeth.
Well, because he has to will the flowstone to overlay onto Dominaria, and then the troops can travel over, and then it retracts.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a lot of work to do.
He's bearing down by the looks of it.
He's wrinkly as hell, too.
He is.
Damn, guy. Come on. So similar attacks were happening to the ruling families of Benalia, including Clan Capuchin. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't mention this when I mentioned Benalia, but they have the 6 ruling families, and every year, every couple of years, they switch. You know how in a government you have the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary. That's what they do, but for Benalia. So it's these ruling families, and then 1 year, one of them is the president, one of them is the vice president, one of them controls the money, one of them controls the military. The notes.
That are
take notes.
Yeah.
You take minutes.
You're the note taker.
So it's kind of an interesting way that they set things up, and they all marry into each other's families to keep the families going. It's like royalty.
That is kind of an interesting way to do it because
Nobody gets too much power,
and it's all transparent, right? Like if someone's like bullshitting or fudging the money or something, right? Like the person who comes in next will find out. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, really, it keeps them honest.
Yeah, I like it.
Plus, they're all banging each other, and that's going to keep you honest. So, the Capuchins and the rest of Benalia were less successful at defeating the Phyrexian invaders, meaning that more of their people died in the attacks, but they were able to protect their country for several centuries, while they also became more adept at fighting against Phyrexia. So it's sort of, Phyrexia is finding out how to beat these people in battle, but they're also learning how to beat Phyrexians. So, little bit of both. And like most of Yawgmoth's plans, they're not great.
not a great planner, that Yawgmoth daddy.
No way. No, he's not.
No, he just kind of like brute forces.
He does.
Yeah, he sleeps too much. He's going into hibernation for like centuries, and then he comes out and he's communicating with his inner circle, and they're not doing a good job.
And that's the thing, right? Like he rules his inner circle with fear, and you're not going to get your best work that way.
No, that's fascism. That's it never works. Literally, like in history, it never works. People always rise up against fascism. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, the latter portions of the novel are mostly this: Benalia and Keld fight off attacks by Davol's troops and the continuation of the Capuchin bloodline. So, we're just gonna again, brevity. We're gonna fast forward to the attack on Keld that Krog decided he needed to take part in, and Krog and Krog. It's a C and a K, so that's how you remember. But by this point, Gatha had been sharing his slow time water with Krieg. So Krieg, by this point, Krieg has lived about 150 years, and has really whipped Keld into shape. They're just like a perfect fighting force. They've been fighting against Phyrexia. They haven't been doing well against Phyrexia, but all this has been going on for a very long time by this point. Krog knew about Gatha's research and planned to take it for Phyrexia when he defeated Krieg, and had broken the spirit of the remaining Keldan witch kings and warlords and war hosts, and he would offer Gatha to Yawgmoth as a gift. At this point in the story, the Phyrexian attacks on Keldan territory had been almost endless, and Krieg's forces had slowly been whittled away. Gatha must have intuited that this attack was the final push that the Phyrexians would need to take Keld, so in order to protect his research from falling into Phyrexian hands, he cast a series of spells that, if triggered by Gatha, his labs and all his research would be vaporized.
Damn.
He had to use magic to safeguard his labs because, unlike every other Phyrexian attack against Keld, he would be on the battlefield, fighting side by side with Krieg. And again, we didn't really get into this, but in the book, these two have a full-on bromance. Like, they are BBFs.
Nice.
BFFs.
I guess it could be BBFs, like best buds forever.
Yeah. But yes, they are they are thick as thieves. And Krieg actually does place, per his great grandfather Trog's promise to Gatha, he did eventually place Gatha on the Warlord Council, and Gatha sat on the council, and people opposed it, and Krieg just murdered them right then and there, and he's like, no, this is my guy.
Yeah, what are you gonna say about it? I'll kill you.
When the attack came, the Phyrexian and Keldan forces were pretty evenly matched. The Keldans were actually starting to turn the tide when Krog joined the fray. The Inner Circle member tore through Krieg's remaining Witch Kings until he came face to face with Krieg himself.
Is that Krieg?
I don't know who that is, but that's like a Keldon. I thought it might be Krieg. I couldn't. There's actually, if you look up Krieg, you can't find a picture of him. Like, they never made him into a card, but that would be a good commander card, because with commander precons, they'll give us characters from Magic's past, like the Thanos or Zancha, which is kind of that's a fun nod, and just give us a fun legendary creature.
Yeah, I always like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Krieg was able to grievously wound Krog, but in their fight, but in the end, he was no match for a fully completed Phyrexian. While Krieg was wounded by the Phyrexian, Krog advanced on Gatha, intent on taking the mage as a prisoner of Phyrexia. But Gatha instead triggered the spells that then destroyed his labs, and threw himself off a nearby cliff. He's dead.
He killed himself.
And that's what I kind of, like Gatha sort of seems like this morally bankrupt character. And he kind of is, he kind of is. But, in the end, what he was trying to do was protect Dominaria from Phyrexia, right? Like he did sort of overall like hold with that particular ideal of the Tolarian Academy and Urza and Baron. And that doesn't get rid of all the bad things he did, but it is sort of it's kind of redeeming. Yeah. So I kind of like that. It's like I'm not going to give you my knowledge or my research. Like it's just going to die with me. You can't have it. So Krieg, mortally wounded and inspired by Gatha's sacrifice, then threw himself off the same cliff, depriving the Phyrexian of his own genetic material. Wow. I guess they could have just gone down there and grabbed it, but they didn't.
That is like a romance. It's like a Romeo and Romeo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. It's very, very romantic. So with their prize destroyed and with Krogh in no shape to continue the battle, the Phyrexians retreated back to Rath, leaving Kell to hobble on without any further interference from Phyrexia. So they just wanted to tamp down a potential threat for their eventual invasion.
Well, that's what it ended up being, because obviously they wanted the trophies of Gatha and also Krieg, but didn't get the research, so, well, this is useless now. And
Krogh, he essentially failed, and he's mortally wounded, so he can't go back to Phyrexia for fear of being killed, because he also hasn't killed Urza, which was also one of his orders.
Yeah, he's like, don't wake Daddy.
And if he goes back in that condition,
stay out of the basement.
The Davil would probably just kill him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's the end of Gatha and Krieg's story, and
R.I.P.
Nobody's perfect, I guess.
That's what it'll say on his epitaph.
So after the battle, Krogh was very badly damaged and needed a lot of repairs. And I'm using that wording because he's essentially a machine.
He's fully completed.
That's right. But he couldn't very well go back to Phyrexia to get those repairs, like I already mentioned. He basically went back to Rath with his troops and began a convalescence that would last a couple of centuries. And so now at this point, we'll move on to the third and final time period in this story. And in the book, part 3 is called Natural Selection. And it takes place between 4014 to 4149 AR. So in that time, Davil could have killed Krogh and ascended to the position of Evincar, but he didn't because he's kind of a wimp. I don't know. He's just go for it, dude.
I thought that's what was going to happen.
Me too.
You said he went back. Too. I was like, oh.
Yeah, me too. He's just like sleeping, just like dousing himself with oil. And he also had to, because he was so badly damaged, what he had to do was regrow his organic parts and then like manually swap those out for new metal parts. It's a Phyrexian thing. I don't know exactly how it works. But,
so Phyrexian.
I know. So, anyway, remember when we mentioned that one of Davil's tasks was to improve on the Negator's design in order to hunt down and kill Urza?
I remember.
Good. Well,
I remember.
Davil had been doing that unsuccessfully, of course, but the Negators were improving and it was getting harder for Urza to kill them, but he could always kill them just the same up to this point. And on one of these attacks on Urza was quite fortuitous for Urza. He had been somewhere on Dominaria. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but when he was attacked by two of Davil's Negators, Urza killed one of them and chased the other one back to the Rathi overlay, the place where the Negators had traveled from Rath to Dominaria.
Oh, shit.
Urza crossed over onto Rath and knew at once what it was. He was no stranger to artificial planes, and he was able to intuit what the flowstone was and what was being done with it.
Cool.
It's like at the end of Usual Suspects, when the cop realizes that Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Sose and he drops the cup and he's looking at everything. That's what Urza's doing.
Just I bet Urza dropped his cup.
Yeah. So Urza realized that the invasion was coming sooner than he'd expected, so he planeswalked back to Dominaria and redoubled his efforts for its defense. It's like, dude, just use the overlay. What are you planeswalking for? I guess it was so he could just immediately jump to Tolaria, but
yeah,
it's like do.
I always picture them doing a moonwalk. Like if they're planeswalking, it's like they're going like do.
I always picture them just like closing their eyes and like disappearing into like a portal of like lightning and fire.
That's cool.
Yeah, but like backwards, not like flying backwards, just like sort of
like drifting back into it. Cool.
Yeah, or like the way Thanos teleports in Avengers Endgame, or Avengers Infinity War.
Because they call it planeswalking. I was like, oh, they physically walk through a portal that they like make or whatever.
You're probably right.
Yeah,
Eric.
that's probably closest. I would think. So when Urza went back to Tolaria and told Baron about what he discovered, Baron wasn't altogether surprised. Phyrexians had always been resourceful, and he didn't think the lengths both Phyrexian and Urza went to in this war were all that different anymore. Baron's thoughts at this point in the story.
Life must endure. Urza said that to me once, and as usual, there's just enough truth in it to suit the planeswalker's purpose. What he failed to recognize is that life will endure, often despite the best or worst intentions of individuals, no matter how powerful.
That's right. That's why fascism doesn't work.
You heard it here first, folks. That is our editorial stance on fascism.
So anyway, during Krog's recovery, Davol continued his work. He kept improving on his negators, manufacturing more flowstone, and he also continued to transport more troops to Dominaria. Actually, this makes me think of Crick, because yeah, because Davol, I feel like Crick put up a pretty good fight against Urza, and maybe Davol should have been just making an army of Cricks. Because he almost got him. He almost got Urza.
Yeah, but Crick was like silly. He was like playing with his food a little bit too much.
Yeah, just
he should have just wrapped it up. Yeah.
That's what's great about the negators. They just kill.
Maybe you can't make an army of Cricks.
No, he probably can't.
They probably all fight each other.
Crick's 1 in a million, baby.
You're 1 in a million.
So, Davol was specifically sending more troops to Benalia because by this point Keld was no longer a concern. He had been steadily testing the Benalish people's strength and their tactics in fighting off Phyrexian troops, and much like he did with Keld so many decades earlier. This part of the novel takes us through the generations of Clan Capuchin that continued to both fight against Phyrexian attacks as well as those that were a part of Urza's Bloodline project. And again, for the sake of brevity, we're not going to get into every Capuchin that is showcased in the novel, but we will say that Karn was present for all of it. So, when during those parts, we are experiencing it through Karn. Not that he can remember any of it anymore. So, even though he had only been promised to Clan Capuchin for 50 years, he was still with them all those centuries later. And, if Urza made the deal with a guy that was long dead, Nathan Capuchin, and Karn couldn't remember anything past 20 years, then why would he leave?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I don't know if Urza thought about that. I don't know. But he probably did.
Like, you know what? He's out of my hair. I got other shit to deal with.
Yeah, probably.
He's so sad all the time.
God.
He's such a needy baby.
What do I gotta do? So, much like Keld, Benalia's forces had been whittled away over the centuries, Clan Capuchin in particular. By the time that Krog finally woke up from his restorative hibernation, all but one Capuchin had been killed. That Capuchin was the final stage in Urza's Bloodline project and the heir to the legacy, and that was baby Gerard Capuchin. That's probably a name that's familiar to some of you. Gerard. Eric knows.
Oh, great, because I don't.
Gerard's the Weatherlight captain.
Yeah, Gerard, hero of the Weatherlight.
Captain Gerard.
Yeah, captain.
Excellent.
Reporting for duty. Admiral Baby. There's this picture of my brother from when he was a baby, and he has like a little sailor suit on, but like it's more like an admiral suit, like it's a white shirt with those little shoulder things
and the stripes
and
on
no
it.
No hat. It's very like distinguished, and so we that's like Admiral Baby.
Yeah, he's Admiral Baby
instead of just like a baby sailor. Anyways, so Karn also carried with him, more specifically inside of him, most of the legacy artifacts that Urza had left with him for safekeeping.
Does he know what they are anymore?
Maybe he has a similar mantra, like the Jorah mantra.
Oh,
the
yeah.
picture.
He's like, these trinkets inside me are valuable. Shouldn't get rid of them.
They are my friend. He has
I need these trinkets.
No, he just has a picture of them.
Yeah.
All together.
This is my friend Jorah. These are my important trinkets.
So during the aforementioned battle, the then current leader of Clan Capuchin had ordered Karn to take baby Gerard away to safety. And that's the last we'll see of them until the next book, when we find out about Gerard's early years and the fate of the legacy artifacts.
So, teenage Gerard.
No, he's going to be a man.
Man Gerard.
Yeah. Baby man.
Baby man.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And this leads us into the final chapter of this episode, which is the first Evincar of Rath. We finally got here, everybody. So when Krog woke up from his convalescence, he found that Davil had all but become the master of Wrath. So Krog challenged him in combat, something that Davil was sure to lose. He was wicked old now. So Davil did what any good leader would do. He sent his best negator to fight Krog. Physically, they were pretty evenly matched, but Krog had the advantage of experience, and after a short toe-to-toe, he eviscerated the negator, then advanced on Davil. Instead of killing him, Krog did something much worse.
Oh.
He pulled down his pants.
No.
I'm kidding. As he approached Davil, Krog extended one of his talon-like fingers, and when he reached Davil, he ripped off the skullcap that protected the Corsican's exposed bit of. Well, I have written brain here, but it's like more like a soft spot. There's skin, but it's just skin and then brain. And Krog stuck his finger into it, his like extended talon, and he drained Davil of all of his knowledge, everything he had learned during his time as Steward of Wrath. And Krog now possessed the knowledge to breed superior negators, and more importantly, the mastery over Flowstone that Davil had harnessed over the centuries. With that, Krog left Davil to writhe around on the floor and sat on the throne at the center of the stronghold, becoming the first Evincar of Rath.
Oh, man.
Damn.
And now we have just one more detail before we wrap things up. Baron Rain finally, after years of banging each other, had a child who would become another member of the Weatherlight's crew. But we'll find out more about their child when we cover the next novel in this series.
Ooh, does their child fall in love with baby Gerard? Maybe it's a girl.
Know.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, I'm
I
tossing
think
in
I
my
know who it
prediction.
is, but I won't say. And
Don't say
I might have given it away when I said Gerard's name, because I said the wrong thing. But
I missed it, so
I missed it too.
Oh shoot, I have to edit the episode, so I'll
no!
hear it.
Look what you made.
well, I think you have to know the cards, so
Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll probably be. I don't
you
know
have
the
to know
cards.
what the card
so.
is called.
So was this sort of like the peak of the plot? Like, you know how like a story kind of has like a climax? Was this event kind of it, or like was this just more of a novel of like?
No, this was kind of like the. Yeah, that's why it was boring, because this novel is a. It's sort of like a joining of the first three novels in this series.
Yeah, like not like I will definitely say like the first one was definitely a lot better than this.
And so this joins like Urza's story and Urza's initial journey, and like Urza's sort of like the dad character that gets everybody prepared for the Phyrexian invasion, which is like the first day of school. And then the next series of books, which is the Weatherlight Saga, it's 4 more books. And that's like all these new characters, like these 2 baby characters we just talked about. They're going to be adults in the next book. And so it's sort of like the next series of books. It's like the old making way for the new, the new characters. So I think that's why this book was a little like kind of humdrum. There were exciting parts, obviously, like, but this book kind of like bridges the gap. And I think 4s are just hard, right?
Sure.
Like a trilogy is much easier. Like we have the beginning, middle, and end, but 4s are a little tougher. And like, this is a very, like the whole like Urza's story is quite a few books. So there's a lot here, and sort of like this book, how Urza wasn't a very prominent character in this book, especially in the latter part of it. He's going to be even less of a character in the preceding books. He's there, but like I said, it's more about these new characters. It's more about the people that are actually going to
be part
defend
of the
against
defense. Yeah.
when the invasion does inevitably come. So with that, we're gonna wrap up this episode. We do hope you enjoyed this this series. It's so funny, I say series, but this is like an ongoing series, and then we do these like smaller part series. But people know what we're talking about. I guess we should have done this last week, but whatever you celebrate at this time of year, we wish you a very happy, have a good time and a happy new year, and
Happy holidays.
And be well.
And hopefully, by this time next year, we'll be able to go out and play at game stores and do the things that we love and open up the magic cards that we get for Christmas in front of the people that got them for us.
And, if you're at the grocery store and you have a tickle in your throat and you have to cough, you'll actually be able to cough without fear of people going,
J'accuse.
"Oh, God!"
Yeah.
That happened to me once. I choked on a piece of gum and I needed to cough profusely, and I held it in because I thought people would just
string
be
you up,
"Peg!"
get her, get her.
Chase me with pitchforks.
All right, everybody. Well, we're going to be back next week with some deck tech stuff, and what is this? This is like episode 96. We're very excited about episode 100. Ainsley's going to be on it again.
Yep.
And Riley.
Yeah, all
which is
four
the
of
first,
us.
That's the first episode with you and Riley. I don't know if Eric and I are going to be able to handle it,
Yeah,
but we're going to go for
me
it.
and Riley are probably going to fight the whole time.
Yeah.
We're just going to fight.
No, you guys are just going to get on tangents together.
Probably
and
that.
Eric and I are just going to roll our fucking eyes.
But we won't be able to see each other rolling our eyes.
All right, everybody. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Command Beacon. I forgot to do it again. Eric, where can everybody find us on the on the web?
On the winterwebs.
You can definitely find us on Instagram at Turn One Story in the Podcast. If you want to get in touch with us directly, Turn One Story in the Podcast at gmail.com. We're throwing everything onto the YouTubes, so Turn One Story in the Podcast, best way to find us. And if you like our stuff a lot, we have a Patreon. Check us out over on the Patreon. Patreon.com/Turn1SoulRing.
And Ainsley, give us your social media.
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle has changed now. It's Honored Alternatives.
That's right.
Honored with a U.
Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Well, stay safe out there, and we will be back next week as usual.
Thanks, everybody.
Take it easy.
Bye now.
And 9 were given to the kings of men.
Turn one soul ring.